Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of AUHSD Future Talks. I'm your host, Superintendent Michael Matsuda, and we are so very excited to have a really special guest with us, Neil Sahota. Neil is an expert, a national and world-renowned expert in artificial intelligence. He is also working with the Anaheim Union High School District Kennedy High School on their artificial intelligence pathway, which you're going to hear more about. But Neil, you want to say a quick hi to our audience?
Hey, hello everybody. I'm really excited to be here. And Mike, thanks for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a background on Neil. He is an IBM Master Inventor, so he's had a long affiliation with IBM. He's a United Nations artificial intelligence expert, and he's currently on the faculty of the University of California, Irvine, and our partnership, of course, with through the Anaheim Pledge and partnership with UCI has been vital to bringing Neil to the Anaheim Union High School District. So I want to put a shout out to the UCI folks there. But Neil is also an author of a best-selling book called "Own the A.I. Revolution: Unlocking Your Artificial Intelligence and Strategy to Disrupt Your Competition." So, an amazing book, an amazing read. I'm just going to read the first opening paragraph to get you excited about this. He writes, "Are you prepared for the digital earthquake, tornado, hurricane, and tsunami, all wrapped into one, that's about to engulf our world? If you've read the headlines, you know that artificial intelligence threatens to disrupt every domain of human existence. So, how can you forecast the stratospheric possibilities and endless opportunities? How can you mitigate the risks? More importantly, how can you avoid the unintended avalanche of consequences accelerated by AI? It's just possible. Something this big, you might be thinking. Not so, says Neil Sahota. So that's our segue into our discussion about owning the artificial intelligence revolution. So, Neil, I'm going to open with that big question. How do we own it, and what does this all mean for us going forward?
It's a great question because I know that for a lot of people, they think this is the realm of really smart technologists. And I will tell you that AI is a different form of computing that we're used to. And the people that have been the most successful with it are the ones that know their domain space, know their business or their industry, and they may know some technology or none at all, but they partner with some of these folks. So from legal tech to sports to movies to art, you name it, it's all about actually understanding the problems and the space we're in. So that's how we all have an opportunity to actually use AI, even if we're not a data scientist or programmer.
How do you define AI, Neil?
Good question, Mike, because it seems to be quite a variable definition out there. So AI, and I'm proud to say the UN has adopted this definition, really centers around three core components. That's that it has the ability of machine learning. So we don't program it, we don't give it a bunch of algorithms, we give it rules on how to make decisions, which we call the ground truth, and we give it lots of data to study. And so, like we do, it learns through experimentation, observation, trying things, and of course, human teachers. Second, it has the ability to actually understand natural language. Think about how we use speak, like idiom, slang, jargon. Like if I say I'm feeling blue, most people know what I'm talking about, but for a computer, it's like, wait, Neil's physically the color blue somehow? It doesn't really make sense. So the AI will actually take contextual understanding. So it actually understands like slang. And the third is has the ability to interact like it's another person. So you can try this at home. If you type into Google, show me restaurants near me, but not pizza, guess what? You get a lot of pizza places because it sees the keyword pizza. But AI is, again, it's looking for intent, says, I get it. You want something nearby, but not pizza restaurants, right? And AI has the ability to actually communicate back and ask questions and say, well, how far are you willing to drive? Or how much money are you willing to spend? So it can actually seek more information to give you the best possible answer. It's really these three key things that enable AI, and more importantly, allow it to try and figure out answers to questions we don't know the answer to.
You know, I've heard you speak a handful of times now, and thank you again in your work with our students and building our pathway, artificial intelligence pathway at Kennedy High School, which we intend to be the region's leading pathway in Southern California, if not the entire state. But I learned a little bit about because one of the assumptions is that things like coding are so important to artificial intelligence, and I think all of us were surprised to hear your answer.
There's not that much coding involved when it comes to AI, right? Most of the coding is around building what we call the user experience, like the wrapper, but the technology itself doesn't require much coding. Most of these engines are built, and we get to use them. But the key thing when it comes to AI is more about the data and the training, right? And that's the secret sauce, so to speak.
So districts should be shifting to more sort of data analytics and understanding big data and these trends and what to make of that.
That's right, because think about it this way. We take a lot of things for granted the way we think and operate, right? If I'm looking like you at Mike right now, I'm trying to gauge how you might be feeling, right? It's very subconscious. But we also know that we can teach machines how to do this and tell that, hey, he's really concerned, or he's sad, or he's happy. But then we have to teach about body language and all the points on the face that reveal emotions. So it's understanding that nature and being able to teach that to the machine and showing the data of all these different emotional states. That's the key part here. So a lot of emphasis on understanding information is going to really be key to the future of work.
So, especially for our young people, we have nearly 30,000 students, grades 7 through 12, who I think as they explore their career pathways, more and more are going to end up in artificial intelligence, right? Because it does connect across every domain. What are some of the, sort of job opportunities, real job opportunities do you see with young people? And on the other side, where do you see jobs maybe disappearing, traditional jobs kind of disappearing?
Well, I'll start with the second part first, because unfortunately, a lot of jobs will eventually go away. The UN actually estimates that the students in kindergarten today, by the time they graduate high school, 40% of the jobs that exist will be gone, right? And the goal here is not to automate people out of work. It's just the nature of work is changing, and that's always happened throughout history. But that's why I think actually the students today have a huge superpower that guys my age don't. They're not married to the old ways of thinking and the old processes. And so they actually can tap into this, power of imagination and rethink about how things will actually work and find new better ways. And so it's going to be more complex work. It's going to be more high value work. But it's going to be a lot of stuff around like philosophy and the arts, right? If we're going to trust machines to make recommendations or decisions, we really need to be able to think through the different scenarios and all these different types of planning that, to be honest, historically, we as humans have not been great at. And so this, I think, is really the opportunity for the students today, is to take those reins on and become, well, today they would be futurists, but really the creators of tomorrow.
Speaking of futurists, many of us have read people like Yuval Noah Harari, who's talking about, this sort of synthesis across different disciplines that artificial intelligence is creating. Like, biotechnology is one of them, or how do we deal with global warming? You need to have a more integrated approach to your thinking. And I love, I know we have a lot of VAPA people, visual and performing arts, who are concerned about the narrowing of the curriculum and pushing out the arts and sort of this imagination of young people. Do you want to go a little bit deeper in terms of why you think that humanities end of the spectrum is so important as we enter into the age of artificial intelligence?
I genuinely believe that AI will help us be more human, and we're seeing it. It's this opportunity to explore the depths of humanity, I think, is really crystallized in a project in Nairobi, Kenya called Loving AI. It's probably not what people immediately think, but before the pandemic, the biggest illness in the world was loneliness. And about 40% of the world suffered from moderate to severe loneliness. And so these group of scientists and therapists.
And that was before the pandemic.
That was before the pandemic. Yeah, it's probably a lot worse today. They decide, could we teach AI unconditional love? Could we give people an outlet, a safe space, let them build confidence, not as a substitute for human relationships, but to build up their ability to develop human relationships? And as they went down this path, they realized, well, what's unconditional love mean, right? We got to teach the machine. How do we kind of define what this is? And then, but are there different forms of love, right? You get the love between the two spouses, and a parent and child, and between friends. And it led them down this really deep exploration of what it actually means to be human. And I think we're going to see more and more of this. In fact, when you talk about where the jobs of tomorrow will be, there's going to be a huge demand for life coaches and yoga instructors and therapists and stuff. It's going to be more around the nature of being human and our life and our balance than everyone trying to become a computer programmer. And I think that's a big part of why the arts are going to be so important, because arts are so deeply connected to humanity. But we're also seeing that AI is fueling new forms of art. AI is a great way to motivate people to take action. And I think that for all the emphasis there is on STEM, and rightfully so, it truly is more STEAM. It's really going to be a lot more on arts and philosophies that we really talk to. It's something I actually mentioned in my book and elaborate on why this is so important. But I think if we're going to get kids ready for the future of work, we really have to put more emphasis onto philosophy and the arts.
Wow, that's going to go extremely well in our district, where we have a very balanced approach to the curriculum and offering really strong arts programs, not only traditional arts, but bringing in sort of that creative gene into traditional areas. Because I think you're absolutely right, to unleash that innovation and creativity that America once prided itself has been kind of flattened with so much sort of this standardized testing world that we find ourselves in 2021 here. And so America truly is at a crossroads in terms of education. So it's great that you are speaking for the arts. The other thing I think you and I have talked about briefly was the importance of cultivating teachers who know how to integrate across curricular areas. Could you touch on that in terms of what your thoughts are?
Be happy to. And I think teachers, they have a tough job, given everything going on. And I know that some of these things are challenging, but we want to become a little bit siloed, right? We kind of focus on, okay, I'm teaching math, and so I stick to the math domain. I'm teaching science, I stick to the science domain. I'm teaching art, so I'm teaching, and as a result, we create all these verticals.
Yes.
But we don't talk about how they actually kind of meld together at times. And I think we talk about the ability to create future thinkers, create creatives, and philosophers. It's the melding of these different disciplines. It's the synergy, if you will, that really unlock innovation, disruption, and opportunity. And we have to find more ways where we can kind of bridge the things together, because teaching, even as a professor at UC Irvine, you see it all the time, where the students wonder, like, why am I learning this stuff? I don't know how this fits into, like, if I'm a computer programmer, why am I learning linear algebra, right? And you take that like your first year, and then your fourth year, you're taking these computer science classes where suddenly like, oh, now you have to know linear algebra. And like, oh, I didn't realize that. I didn't pay attention in class often enough. And so not connecting those dots together like that and showing how this stuff actually applies in other domains and disciplines, I think, unfortunately, it does a disservice sometimes. So I think students, if they know why and they see the interlacing, I think it motivates them more to realize the value of the overall education.
Yeah, the ability to connect the dots, I think that is one of the, foundational pieces of artificial intelligence, looking for patterns, right? And working with creating machines that can help identify these patterns. But you need humans to say, okay, what exactly is going on here? Because I think we're at an age with data, that there's just too much data, and we don't have the ability to connect the dots because there are too many dots out there, right? And it's very interesting as we look at sort of some of the leaders in these areas, Facebook and Apple. I know there's a little bit of, it's interesting what some of the leaders of those companies are saying about the use of big data, sort of the ethical piece of that. Can we return back to this sort of ethical big question about artificial intelligence? And for me, I see it kind of like with the nuclear bomb, right? Nuclear power could be used for good or bad. What are some of the dark sides that you see in this debate that's going on with artificial intelligence, and how the data could be used in a maybe a negative way, and why the ethics are so important?
Well, unfortunately, there's a lot of power with AI, and so it's not even necessarily misuse, but we'll call it shady use that causes problems. So we've already seen where the AI has gotten so good in deciphering our behaviors and our language patterns that they can influence what we think and what we believe. And we've seen that appear, unfortunately, in how people are convinced to vote or things they believe in that may not be factual. Like you look at some of the anti-vaxxers going on right now, that they're getting fed a lot of this information that we know is just not rooted in truth, but they believe it as gospel. And this, unfortunately, is a testament that we get fed information so fast, and the AI algorithms learn based on this, or how people want to kind of push them to a point of view, that they keep finding better and better ways to reinforce that idea. And you look at things like deep fakes, like, they're videos that they look like the person, sound like the person, same type of mannerisms. We've seen them with like President Obama, for example. And they're so good, it's hard to tell if that's really the person or not. And a lot of people wonder how they do this. Well, that's an AI that's been trained to fool other AI systems. So unfortunately, these bad actors can cause a lot of damage this way, which really puts it on us to think about what is right use, what is ethical use, but create this mindset of let's try and use the technology for good. Because most technologists, they think about what's the outcome, right? If I want to do this, they don't think about the other ways the technology could be used or misused. And so if we don't, again, develop these philosophy and the arts mindset, we're never going to realize these problems. I mean, if you'll indulge me for a moment, Mike, drone technology is great. A great example of this, right? Because we're used to being reactive. You fly a drone, okay, no problem. But what if that drone's over your backyard? Is that okay? What if the drone's taking pictures of your backyard? Is that okay? What if the drone's taking pictures of your kids, right? Young kids in the backyards, is that okay? Right? No one ever went through all these things. As things happened, as people flew drones by airports, that's when like, oh, wait a second, and with change moving so fast, and AI moves very fast, we can't afford to be reactive anymore. We have to be proactive and anticipate what might happen.
So, Neil, what happens if schools do not make the shift, as AUHSD is attempting to do, in terms of building these artificial intelligence pathways for young people? Like a lot of people that I know want, when this pandemic is over, want to go back to business as usual. Like that's what schools do, raise test scores, that sort of thing. What do you think are the potential consequences if schools do not feel this urgency to make the shift?
I think it's going to exacerbate the digital divide rift that's already going on, right? The haves and the have-nots and the skills for those jobs. These are big drivers for income inequality. And if schools don't start making some of these shifts, it's going to widen that divide. And I know that a lot of people are hoping to go back to normal, but the truth is there is no normal to go back to. It's about getting ready for the next normal. And you can either be the passenger and ride along whatever happens, or you can be the driver and shape what that next normal will actually be. And having curriculum around emerging technology or getting students even some basic skills on AI is a way to be a driver.
So as we close, I want to ask you, what is your driver? How does Neil Sahota end up being one of the national leaders and spokespeople for artificial intelligence? What brought you to this whole field?
Probably pure accident. I've always been the kind of guy that wants to solve problems, and I'm very passionate about social good. And so I always look at technology as a way to accelerate some of those goals. And, you know, 15 years ago, there was a boost in business analytics and all these things about using data. And I had working for a lot of people like, C-level guys at Disney and Starbucks and all these saying like, it's amazing what computers can tell us. I'm like, well, computers aren't telling us anything, but could they? And that set me down this path of, could I create an AI system to help us crunch data and make smart decisions?
So you were part of the team that with IBM that helped with the with building the chess player, all these things, right? That have shown the promise of AI.
Well, yeah, but it wasn't chess. So I got, based on my work, I got contacted by IBM R&D, and so I was part of the original IBM Watson team. So we did the Jeopardy challenge. And
Oh, the Jeopardy challenge. That's right.
Yeah,
Yes.
a lot of people always wonder, well, isn't that easy? And it's like, well, again, think about how we talk, right? And there's a game where it's you give them the answer, you have to figure out the question. It's actually hard for a machine to do that. So that, Mike, was almost 10 years ago, which is why I always tell people AI is not the future. It's very much the present now.
Well, the Jeopardy is all about learning how to ask the right question, right? And Neil, we're so blessed to have you asking the right questions right now. So on behalf of our 30,000 students and their families and all the listeners out there, thank you, Neil. It's been a wonderful 25 minutes or so conversation with you. Really appreciate it.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks, everybody.